London, 1903. A 3-year-old girl tumbles down a staircase, strikes her head, and dies. The physician examines her and delivers the verdict. She didn't survive. But hours later, Dorothy stirs back to life, and when she opens her eyes, she says something astonishing. I want to go to my true home in Egypt. You're about to hear one of the most startling reincarnation accounts ever recorded, a story that challenges everything we think we know about life and death. Dorothy had been an ordinary child, the daughter of an English tailor, until the day everything changed forever. She was playing at home when she tripped and fell down the stairs. The blow was so severe that she remained unconscious for hours. The doctor arrived, checked her, and gave her parents a crushing pronouncement. I'm sorry, she's gone. Dorothy was declared dead. And then the inexplicable happened. A few hours later, as her grieving parents kept vigil, Dorothy opened her eyes. She was alive. The doctor had no explanation. Once Dorothy fully recovered, her parents noticed something deeply unsettling. The little girl who had returned was not quite the same. She spoke in odd ways, using words no English child should know. Then Dorothy said something that made her parents' blood run cold. I want to go home, my real home in Egypt. How could a 3-year-old who had never left London know anything about Egypt? That was only the beginning. In the months after the accident, Dorothy began having dreams so vivid they felt more real than waking life. She sketched Egyptian hieroglyphs with eerie accuracy, sang in an ancient tongue no one could identify, and wept inconsolably, begging to return to the temple. But what happened at the British Museum stunned everyone. When Dorothy was 4, her parents brought her to the British Museum, hoping the exhibits might interest her. The moment they entered the Egyptian galleries, something extraordinary occurred. Dorothy ran toward the mummies and began kissing the statues' feet, crying out, "These are my people, people of my land." Guards tried to stop her, but she seemed entranced. Pointing to an image of a ruined temple, she said, "This is my home. But where is the garden? Where are the trees I planted?" The image depicted the temple at Abydos in Egypt, a place Dorothy had never seen or studied. How could a 4-year-old English child know architectural details of an ancient sanctuary? The most shocking reveal was still ahead. Dorothy began sharing intimate details of temple life, secret rites, hidden corridors, caches of treasure information even veteran archaeologists didn't possess. I was Bentreshyt, she said. I served the god Osiris. I knew Pharaoh Seti personally. He loved me. Dorothy's parents were desperate. How do you handle a child who claims to have lived 3,000 years ago? How do you explain knowledge that should be impossible? Then Dorothy made a vow that would define her life. One day I will return to Abydos and prove it is all true. She grew up driven by a single obsession, to go back to Egypt. She studied hieroglyphs, Egyptian history, and archaeology, but it didn't feel like learning. It felt like remembering. At 27, fate intervened. She met Abdel Megwid, a young Egyptian studying in London. Love blossomed, and Dorothy saw her chance. I can finally go home, she said on their wedding day. In 1933, Dorothy boarded a ship bound for Egypt. As the coastline came into view, she began to sob uncontrollably. I can feel it, the energy of the sacred land, she whispered through tears. I'm coming home after so long. Setting foot on Egyptian soil for the first time in this life, Dorothy knelt and kissed the ground. Onlookers found it strange. For her, it was the fulfillment of a lifelong promise. In Cairo, Dorothy quickly became known by another name, Seti, mother of Seti, after the pharaoh she insisted she had once known in another life. But her real test was still ahead. Dorothy secured work at Egypt's Department of Antiquities, where her extraordinary command of hieroglyphics stunned her supervisors. She translated ancient texts with a fluency that baffled even the most seasoned experts. Yet Dorothy's heart was fixed on one goal, Abydos, the temple she had seen in dreams since childhood, the place where she swore she had once lived as a priestess named Bentreshyt. Finally, in 1956, at age 52, Dorothy was transferred to Abydos as a draftsman. The moment she stepped into the temple ruins, something extraordinary happened. "It's exactly as I remembered," she whispered, walking among the stones as if she knew every inch. Then she stopped at a plain wall and announced, "Behind this lies a secret passage leading to the sacred garden." The archaeologists laughed. That wall had been studied for decades. There was nothing there. But Dorothy insisted with frightening certainty, "I walked through it every day when I was Bentreshyt." 3 weeks later, during routine excavation, workers uncovered exactly what she had described, the remains of a hidden passage leading from the temple to an outer garden. A corridor buried for more than 2,000 years, yet Dorothy had known. And that was only the beginning. Dorothy began pointing out details that left Egyptologists speechless. She knew the location of rooms not yet excavated, described rituals preserved only in rare papyri she had never studied, and identified areas of the temple no outsider could have guessed. "This," she said, pointing to a seemingly empty space, "was the sacred library. And down there, 10 feet below, you'll find the remains of a statue of Osiris broken during a raid." Archaeologists followed her instructions and unearthed precisely what she had foretold, stone for stone. Dorothy wasn't recalling things from books. She was remembering a life lived 3,000 years before. The evidence was undeniable, but the most unsettling revelation was yet to come. One evening, Dorothy told her colleagues she needed to be alone inside the temple. "I have a meeting," she said calmly, "with Seti. He comes every night." The next morning, archaeologists found fresh hieroglyphs etched onto the temple wall, hieroglyphs Dorothy had never copied or studied. The message was chilling. Bentreshyt has returned home. Eternal love never dies. The question haunted them. Who had carved it, and how did Dorothy know glyphs so ancient they weren't even in reference books? Dorothy's nights at Abydos became the stuff of whispered legend. Locals claimed to see strange lights flickering inside the temple ruins, to hear ancient voices echoing through the chambers. Rumors spread about an Englishwoman who conversed with long-dead pharaohs. Dorothy herself confirmed it without hesitation. "Seti visits me every night," she would say with calm certainty. "We talk about the past, about our love, about secrets still waiting to be revealed." In 1970, a British documentary filmmaker decided to investigate her claims. He set up recording equipment inside the temple during one of Dorothy's nocturnal visits. What was captured stunned everyone. At 2 a.m., the microphones picked up Dorothy's voice speaking fluent ancient Egyptian, but she was not alone. A second voice, deeper and commanding, responded in a dialect so archaic that no scholar could fully translate it. Dorothy was not talking to herself. She was having a dialogue with someone invisible. "My beloved Bentreshyt," the mysterious voice said, "you have returned to me after so long." "I have never forgotten you, my Pharaoh," Dorothy answered through tears. "I promised I would come back, and here I am." The conversation lasted 3 hours. Dorothy spoke of secret rituals, hidden treasures, and her duties as a priestess. The voice answered with knowledge that only a pharaoh of the 19th dynasty could have possessed. But then came the most chilling exchange of all. Dorothy asked, "Where is our son? What became of the child we had together?" The reply froze the blood of everyone who later heard the tapes. "He has reincarnated near you, my beloved. He has returned to complete the circle of destiny." Dorothy wept. "I knew it. I always felt he was close." The next morning, she made a confession to the archaeologists. In her former life as Bentreshyt, she had borne Pharaoh Seti, a boy who died very young. And now, she believed, that soul had been reborn as someone near her in this life. But who? In 1973, Dorothy made a bold prediction that left every archaeologist skeptical. 15 meters north of the main temple, she said, 2 meters underground, there is a forgotten burial chamber. Inside lies a papyrus that tells the love story of Pharaoh Seti and a priestess named Bentreshyt. Experts scoffed. That ground had been mapped and surveyed countless times. No chamber had ever been found, but Dorothy was unshakable. "I hid that papyrus myself before I died," she insisted. "I knew one day I would return for it." For months, she begged them to dig. Finally, in December 1973, an international team agreed to test her claim. The first day, nothing. The second, only rubble. By the third, they were ready to quit until the impossible happened. Exactly where Dorothy had indicated, they uncovered a small chamber sealed for millennia. When news reached her, Dorothy trembled. "I can feel it," she whispered. "The papyrus is calling me." Inside, resting in an alabaster urn, was a perfectly preserved papyrus. When experts began translating it, they were stunned. The document told of a forbidden love between Pharaoh Seti and a young priestess of Osiris named Bentreshyt. It described secret meetings, intimate rituals, and the tragedy of their infant son who died. But the final passage was the most disturbing. Bentreshyt swore she would return in another life to be reunited with her beloved Pharaoh. She vowed to carry the memories of that existence until she found her way back to the sacred temple. It was Dorothy's life story, written 3,000 years earlier. When shown the papyrus, Dorothy wept uncontrollably. "I remember writing this," she whispered. "The night before I died, I left proof for when I returned." The archaeologists stood in silence. How could she have known the exact location of a document supposedly written by her own hand 3 millennia ago? But Dorothy claimed there was still more, far more. She told them she knew the greatest secret of Abydos, one hidden since the time of her death as Bentreshyt. In 1974, Dorothy revealed the most dangerous memory of all. She said her death as Bentreshyt had not been natural. She had been poisoned at just 14 years old. Why? The archaeologists asked. "Because I discovered something I was never meant to see," Dorothy answered. "The true treasure of Abydos. Not gold or jewels, something far greater, knowledge." She explained that she and Pharaoh Seti had hidden ancient texts that described the mysteries of the afterlife, how the soul reincarnates, how memories are carried between lives, and how consciousness survives death. These teachings, she claimed, had been inherited from a civilization even older than Egypt itself. "When the priests discovered our love and our secret," Dorothy said, "they silenced me with poison." But before dying, she had sworn to return and reveal the location of those texts. "My reincarnation was no accident," she declared. "It was planned, guided by higher forces." During her nightly visits with Seti's spirit, she said, he gave her precise instructions. "The time has come to reveal everything. Humanity is ready." In 1975, Dorothy, now 71, led archaeologists to a seemingly ordinary spot in the Abydos temple. Stamping her foot on the stone floor, she announced, "Beneath here lies the greatest discovery in human history." Excavations began. For weeks, the team dug under her direction. Then they uncovered a hidden staircase descending deep below the ruins. Dorothy was the first to step inside. As she entered, something extraordinary occurred. The walls glowed with a golden light that no one could explain. Dorothy collapsed to her knees, sobbing. "I'm home," she whispered. "I'm finally home." On the walls were hieroglyphic texts detailing the very process of reincarnation, how souls choose new lives, how consciousness can persist between incarnations, how destiny binds certain spirits together across centuries. But the greatest shock awaited at the center of the chamber. On a black granite altar stood a statue Bentreshyt embracing Pharaoh Seti with a child between them. Dorothy fainted at the sight. When she awoke, she pointed to the child's figure and whispered, trembling, "Our son. I know who he is now. I know who he became in this life." She revealed that for years she had felt a mysterious connection to her Egyptian assistant, Ahmed, a 30-year-old working at the temple. "When I look into his eyes, I see my son, the same soul, the same spirit." Ahmed was called into the chamber. The moment he saw the statue, he began to weep uncontrollably. "I know these people," he said in a trance-like voice. "I've dreamed of them all my life. The woman, she called me her son." The archaeologists were shaken to their core. They were witnessing the reunion of souls who had loved each other 3,000 years ago. The discovery in the secret chamber didn't just confirm Dorothy's impossible memories, it unveiled a truth that shook Egyptology itself. The hieroglyphic text carved into the walls described what they called a sacred circle of reincarnation, a group of souls bound together by destiny, returning again and again to complete a divine mission. According to the writings, Pharaoh Seti, Bentreshyt, and their child had sworn an eternal pact. They would reincarnate together to one day reveal the mysteries of the soul to humanity. Dorothy finally understood the meaning of her life. Her fall down the stairs at age 3 had not been an accident. It was the awakening of memories buried for millennia. Her marriage to an Egyptian had not been chance. It was the path that brought her back to Abydos. Even her career in archaeology had not been luck. It was preparation to rediscover the truths she once guarded. The three of us returned with a mission, she told her colleagues, to prove that reincarnation is real, to show humanity that death is not the end, but only a passage. In the years that followed, Dorothy guided excavations to 7 more hidden chambers at Abydos. Each contained texts on different aspects of the soul's journey, memories between lives, spiritual contracts, and the continuity of consciousness. But Dorothy knew her time in this life was nearing its close. In 1979, she confided to friends, "Seti has told me my mission is nearly complete. I came to reveal the secrets, and soon I must leave to prepare for the next phase." At 75, though frail, she continued to work at the temple daily, yet she was not afraid. "I do not fear death," she would say. "I have died before. I know what awaits me." She spent her last months training Ahmed and other assistants, leaving behind maps and instructions for future excavations. "Knowledge must not die with me," she insisted. On April 21, 1981, Dorothy was found lifeless in her simple bed in Abydos. Her face bore a peaceful smile, and in her hands rested a small statue of Osiris. But her story did not end there. At her funeral, Egyptian workers swore they saw golden lights dancing above her grave, forming the silhouette of a young priestess walking back toward the temple. Though buried in the Christian cemetery, locals secretly built a small Egyptian shrine above her tomb. To them, Dorothy had become something more than a woman. She was a bridge between the living and the dead. After her death, archaeologists entered Dorothy's private room in Abydos and found over 300 handwritten pages filled with hieroglyphics. They were translations of texts she claimed had been dictated to her directly by Pharaoh Seti during her nightly visits. These writings revealed profound details about reincarnation, truths modern science is still struggling to grasp. Even after more than 40 years, Dorothy's story continues to fascinate people around the world. The papyri discovered in the chambers she identified, now known as the Bentreshyt papyri, represent one of the greatest spiritual and archaeological revelations of the 20th century. They describe, with almost scientific precision, how consciousness survives physical death, how memories are transmitted between lives, and how souls return together with missions to fulfill. Ahmed, the assistant Dorothy identified as her reincarnated son, continued her work at Abydos until his death in 2018. In his later years, he often said, "I still feel her presence. She teaches me about the temple in ways no book ever could." She never truly left. The phenomenon Dorothy triggered has continued at Abydos. Visitors from across the globe report mystical visions inside the temple, memories of past lives, encounters with ancient figures, and sensations of having once walked those halls. Tour guides even coined a term for it, the Seti syndrome, the inexplicable awakening of reincarnation memories within Abydos' sacred walls. Dorothy proved that reincarnation is not merely a belief, it can manifest as verifiable reality. Her impossible memories, her knowledge beyond explanation, and her precise archaeological revelations stand as evidence that love and consciousness transcend death itself. She kept her promise. She returned to Abydos, And through her courage, she reminded the world that death is not the end, but the threshold of a new, eternal journey. Today, when the sun sets over the ruins of Abydos, some say they still see the silhouette of a young priestess walking among the columns, as if keeping watch over the temple she once called home. Dorothy's soul, Bentreshyt's soul, remains a beacon for all seekers of truth, whispering across the centuries that love, memory, and destiny never die. If Dorothy's story gave you chills, imagine what other hidden lives and impossible cases of reincarnation might reveal. Subscribe to Paths of the Soul to discover more souls who returned with memories of the past. The next story may be even more haunting than this one.